My name is Shannon. I am aka the spiritual gangsta of Anchored Soul Therapy. For those of you who don't know, I have been in the holistic health industry for 15 years, and I have been in the spiritual community for probably over 30. And but I've been out of the closet for maybe 7. So I have many different things I love to do, which one of them is reading, and which was ignited through the Kangaroo Heroes book club. And now I just wrapped up a 75-day hard challenge on July 4th. And during that challenge, we were supposed to read 10 pages a day. And I actually finished 6 books in that time frame in 75 days. That's how much I like to read. So my focus with Spiritual Gangsta Book Club is we are going to focus on spirituality books, not necessarily religious books, but spirituality books, and have discussion so we can actually open up and talk about our spirituality in a safe space where you guys are allowed to voice your opinions and your thoughts, and we can discuss them in a healthy way. Our group is pretty decent right now, so sharing is completely fine. Our class, it's from 8 to 9, and I don't really like to run too far over since it's already pretty late in the evening. But so when you're sharing, just make sure that you're mindful if anybody else wants to share. I do send out emails after each class. If you'd like to be on the emails and you're not there, just let me know and I can shoot you over the sign up form for that. So in last week's discussion, we talked about our emotions and how the emotions get stuck in the body, and how our body has a reaction to them. And Eckhart goes into saying that it is important for us to make a habit of asking ourselves what's going on inside us. And this is especially true for anybody who has maybe they feel disconnected from their emotions. And then the homework that we had that was going to help integrate you guys into learning what we read, right? So you were supposed to take some time this past week, check in with yourselves on your emotional level, kind of gauge where your emotional frequency was, make note like after you first rose in the morning and prior going to sleep, if your frequency was different. So say you woke up and you were feeling great, but then something happened at the end of the day, maybe you weren't feeling so great. And seeing if when you checked in with those emotions, if there was actually any pain associated with those emotions sitting in your body. So did any of you guys do homework? I feel like a teacher when I ask that.
So, hey, spiritual Shannon, what's up?
Hi, Tanya.
So,
how are you?
I'm good. And it's pronounced Tanya. It's okay.
Tanya, that's
Yeah.
right.
So, this is the first time I'm in here, and usually I don't have this time free to to jump on. But I was just telling a friend that today I'm just listening to my I usually have my son every other week. So his dad and I, he gets him 1 week, I get him 1 week. So he just went back to his dad today. So 2 weeks out of the month I have two kids, and then two weeks out of the month I have one. And I got back from dropping him off, and then I laid down because my lower back and hips and stuff have been kind of hurting. So, and then accidentally had a power nap. Totally didn't mean to have a power nap, but it just meant my body and mind was exhausted. And then today, after I got up, I just kept saying, like, okay, let me jump back into this project or this work or this learning. And my mind just kept going off, like it just wanted to sit and rest. And so I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go into bed. I'm just gonna make me feel good, listen to some music, and just not guilt myself for not learning and cleaning and working and stuff right now. But the and that's when I saw your thing pop up right after I sent that text. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go in there. I could hear part of the book today. But the fact that you're on this subject, so I don't know, I had a space this morning and it was on exactly the same thing. So I just thought it was so crazy with the space we had in census this morning that was my topic, was how your emotions and feelings get stored in your body, and how to connect with that and hear it out. And I was focusing mainly on the hips, right? Because the hips are like the junk drawer of your emotions, right? And how that shows up in your tight hips, and what the meanings are, right? And the psoas muscles of that ligament that pretty much holds our whole body together, that's located right there at the hips. And we were, just talking about that, and it hit me last night when I was telling a girlfriend. I was like, come on to this space with me and co-host with me, because this is what I'm feeling called to talk about tonight. So, or yesterday morning. So it's just so crazy that, well, not crazy, right? There's no coincidences, but the fact that it's being reiterated again for the first time I could make it in on your call, is pretty wild. I love when synchronicities happen that way.
That's so awesome. I love that too. Do you know? I studied some Chinese medicine. Where in the hips is it? Is the front or the back? And what side of the body?
So it's pretty much, so mainly the front. So the psoas muscle, or
Mm-hmm.
the major ligaments that are there. Those have always been pretty tight, and I'm pretty flexible and athletic. And I started to do, on my spiritual journey, I did go through Himalayan, like a Himalayan yogi, I guess, journey. I don't want to say session or class or course, because it wasn't any of those, but it was a really deep, almost as if I would have went to the Himalayan mountains with, a master and guru. And but we had a virtual version of that in the beginning of 2021, and I went into that with all sorts of just pains, and different practices that we were taught help to just really release a lot of that. But the hips, though they've loosened a bit, they still really hurt. So in the front, really deep inside the flexor, I guess,
Mm.
joints or so,
The
and then
right.
definitely at my lower back. Oh, so the left is a little looser than the right. So yeah, the right is definitely tighter, and I have a lot more discomfort on the right side than the left, but they both are equally tender, but they've been tender for as long as I can remember, and they're particularly more tender now. I don't know if it's the super moon that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
astrology is telling me all sorts of stuff is coming up for me, especially around this relationship and future stuff. And I know the front of your hip, when you have that pain and tenderness or tightness there, it's usually because there's some fear of the future, or some, relationships aspect that's going on with that. But I would love to hear your knowledge on that.
Yeah, usually the right side in the front into that. It's usually more the front leg is that stepping into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the right side of the body is the masculine, the left side is the feminine, and the right side of your body into the hip flexor type energy is your ideas of what it means to be like masculine or feminine, whichever
Mm-hmm.
one you resonate with. And then there's a little bit of where it goes into like envy and feelings of validation, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, envy and feelings of violation, and then like then it can go deeper into like pleasure. What is pleasurable, what is, so it's like it's kind of all wrapped into that, and you're releasing. The full moon is about releasing, right? And
Right.
you brought it up for a reason. So you're releasing those ideas and conditioning you have, perhaps the things from the past that are holding you back from moving into the future surrounding your ideas of what it is to be feminine, to be masculine, to be in that balanced energy, and releasing any type of envy or feelings of violation from relationships with masculine, feminine, and any type of sexual trauma around that, all that stuff. It's kind of, it's not like pinpointed as one. It's more like all of that, especially when it's
Yeah.
deep in there.
Right, 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 right. And yeah, a lot of that, all of that. I don't necessarily feel the envy part, but definitely the violation. I came out of a very toxic, abusive, marriage just shy of 3 years ago, and walked away from that, and have been on an aggressive, real healing journey. From this point, walked away from religion, walked away from, just a lot of beliefs, and, then healing, and also becoming a single mom and helping my children heal. So there's definitely been a lot, coming up with that on this. But as you said, there's a future that is calling me, and a past that is holding on, that I've been releasing and releasing along the way. But now it's like, man, I walked away from it was time to separate from a twin flame connection. I didn't even know what the hell that meant. That was a whole nother journey. And I walked away from that last year, or the December of last year. And now I'm like, wow, my hips are really, really, really hurting, and I'm not doing much more than trying to keep my practices up. But I just feel like something else, right? And I do believe it's that fear, of stepping into other spaces, as well as entertaining or not wanting to entertain relationships because of some of the things that you mentioned, and all of that. So all of that makes sense. It's just, yeah, I really want to release this properly, because it's been holding on for a long time, and I really want to let the pain go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like you're lining up for it, for sure. Thank you for sharing. So, does anyone else want to share anything that they got from the homework, or even just observations now regarding your pain body, your emotions? All right. So I didn't really. My pain was actually more so physical, from like exercise or lack of stretching. I have a bad habit of lack of stretching. So that's more so what was going on with me. I do tend to, check in now, um what's going on with me emotionally. I did have, my feminine stuff coming up for me, but I was able to actually handle the pain that came with that this time. It wasn't too much for me, because I was actually being more aware and sitting with it and like talking to my body, so that helped me be more conscious with that. So if nobody has anything to share, let's go ahead and get started. We're on page 36, and we are reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Oh, Jasmine has requested to come up. Welcome, Jasmine.
Hi. It's just funny. Like, you were talking about the right side hip pain, and that's literally what I've been experiencing the last couple of days. Um, but I've had so much in my mind that I didn't really take the time to, like, to think about why it was happening. But literally everything you named was what I was going through.
Oh, wow.
So it was crazy. I was like, oh my God, you're speaking to me right now.
We do come in groups, don't worry.
Right? So then I was just like, like I did start therapy, and I am releasing some past trauma and sexual abuse and everything like that, and that's been like really heavy lately. And I literally cut off one of my parents like recently, and like today, like I got this long message from her, and I decided, I was like, you know what, energetically, I'm just not gonna accept this. I'm gonna let it get me upset for a minute, then I'm gonna release it, which I did. And honestly, I was thinking about it as you were saying it because I'm like, I have not had any hip pain today.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's just crazy. I just came to that whole realization right now.
Wow. Yeah, that can be very difficult, but it's also very
It
empowering
really is.
for
It
you.
really is.
Yeah, so that's
Thank you so
congratulations.
much.
I'm sorry it had to happen that way, but congratulations because it's so powerful for you to take back a lot of that control and power into your life, in a healthy
It
way.
is.
So,
Yeah, it definitely feels right.
oh, that's good. Good. Thank you for sharing. All right. So let's go ahead here. We're page 36. It's past pain, dissolving the pain body. All right. And if anybody has a book and they want to read at any time, just raise your hand and I'll let you guys read. So, as long as you are unable to access the power of now, every emotional pain that you experience leaves behind a residue of pain that lives on in you. It merges with the pain from the past, which was already there, and becomes lodged in your mind and body. This, of course, includes the pain you suffered as a child, caused by the unconsciousness of the world into which you were born. This accumulated pain is a negative energy field that accompanies your body and mind. If you look on it as an invisible entity in its own right, you are getting quite close to the truth. It's the emotional pain body. It has two modes of being, dormant and active. A pain body may be dormant 90% of the time in a deeply unhappy person, although it may be active up to 100% of the time. Some people live almost entirely through the pain body, while others may experience it only in certain situations, such as intimate relationships or situations linked with past loss or abandonment, physical or emotional hurt, and so on. Anything can trigger it, particularly if it resonates with a pain pattern from your past. When it is ready to awaken from its dormant stage, even a thought or an innocent remark made by someone close to you can activate it. Some pain bodies are obnoxious but relatively harmless. For example, like a child who won't stop whining. Others are vicious and destructive monsters, true demons. Some are physically violent. Many more are emotionally violent. Some will attack people around you or close to you, while others may attack you, their host. Thoughts and feelings you have about your life then become deeply negative and self destructive. Illnesses, accidents are often created in this way. Some pain bodies drive their hosts to suicide. When you thought you knew a person and then you are suddenly confronted with this alien, nasty creature for the first time, you are in for quite a shock. However, it's more important to observe it in yourself than in someone else. Watch out for any sign of unhappiness in yourself, in whatever form. It may be the awakening pain body. This can take the form of irritation, impatience, a somber mood, a desire to hurt, anger, rage, depression, a need to have some drama in your relationship, and so on. Catch it in the moment it awakens from its dormant state. The pain body wants to survive just like every other entity in existence, and it can only survive if it gets you unconsciously identified with it. It can then rise up, take you over, become you, and live through you. It needs to get its food through you. It will feed on any experience it resonates with its own kind of energy. Anything that creates further pain in whatever form: anger, destructiveness, hatred, grief, emotional drama, violence, and even illness. So the pain body, when it has taken you over, will create a situation in your life that reflects back its own energy frequency for it to feed on. Pain can only feed on pain. Pain cannot feed on joy. It finds it quite indigestible. Only the pain body has once the pain body has taken you over, you want more pain. You become a victim or a perpetrator. You want to inflict pain, or you want to suffer pain, or both. There isn't really much difference between the two. You're not conscious of this, of course, and will vehemently claim that you do not want pain. But look closely and you will find that your thinking and behavior are designed to keep the pain going for yourself and others. If you were truly conscious of it, the pattern would dissolve. For to want more pain is insanity, and nobody is consciously insane. The pain body, which is the dark shadow cast by the ego, is actually afraid of the light of your consciousness. It is afraid of being found out. Its survival depends on your unconscious identification with it, as well as your unconscious fear of facing the pain that lives in you. But if you don't face it, if you don't bring the light of your consciousness to the pain, you will be forced to relive it again and again. The pain body may seem to you like a dangerous monster that you cannot bear to look at, but I assure you that it is an insubstantial phantom that cannot prevail against the power of your presence. Some spiritual teachings state that all pain is ultimately an illusion, and this is true. The question is it true for you? A mere belief doesn't make it true. Do you want to experience pain for the rest of your life and keep saying that it is an illusion? Does that free you from the pain? What we are concerned with here is how you can realize this truth. That is, make it real to your own experience. So the pain body doesn't want you to observe it directly and see for what it is. The moment you observe it, feel its energy field within you, and take your attention into it, the identification is now broken. A higher dimension of consciousness has come in. It's called presence. You are now the witness or the watcher of the pain body. This means that it cannot use you anymore by pretending to be you, and it can no longer replenish itself through you. You have found your own innermost strength. You have accessed the power of now. So I'm going to pause here for a brief discussion because I don't want to get too long-winded. So this is here. I know we can resonate a lot with this, right? So the first thing, when you probably heard me laugh a little bit, where it said here, the pain body wants to create emotional drama and stuff like that. I giggled because there's a space within my own personal relationship where things became calm, and I literally had to take my mind and talk to my mind out of self-destructive behavior, out of thinking, okay, oh my God, like let's make up a story and see that something's wrong, right? Because of all the trauma that I've been through in the past with relationships, even watching my own mother, go through horrible relationships. I was like, calmness is not normal. I was addicted to chaos. I was addicted to like that was normal for me. So that's the pain body he's talking about, where it's like waking up, thing would be calm, and it was like, oh my God, we have to create this. There's not love here. It was that confusion of love and drama, right? So anyone who's been in toxic relationship definitely understands that one. Does anyone else have anything to share?
Oh yeah, this was just so good to um, hear and just get confirmation of. I've had this book for a while, and I don't think I've read into this far. It's one of those things where it's like I'll read a book and then another book will catch my attention, and another book will catch my attention, and I never circle back around to the original book. Um, so I'm glad that I'm hearing this part, because it's so true, right, Shannon? It's like that when you read that part of, it's just going to keep wanting to feed over and over again on that type of pain. And I look at my ex, who I walked away from that marriage. It took so much um growth, and I don't even know if it was growth. It was just it was almost like it took so much pain. He mentions that part, like the pain body could even drive one to want to kill themselves. Like I got to that point in that relationship, and you know it was something that triggered the switch to do what he just said, is to separate it from it pretending to be me. Like that was really powerful to hear, because it just made me realize this pain body that was created in my childhood, from seeing like yourself, a very unhealthy, abusive, horrible marriage and family life, that my norm was that chaos. So of course that's what my pain body continue to pull to my my into my experience, is this pain and drama, um of being in constant relationships with different versions of my father, and it's not until, as you said, you step into this presence and recognize none of that is you, right? None of that is your consciousness. Now you could put yourself as, well, there's a common denominator here. That common denominator is me. And then you separate it from, it's not that it's me that's the common denominator, it's the patterns, it's the conditions, it's the programming, right? It's that has followed me through all these different experiences, and it's that I now need to witness and identify and separate from. And just as this excerpt says, it starts to dissolve, right? You start asking yourself present moment questions and truths, and it's just it's a scary and great process, and I'm just glad to kind of hear it, all in one place like this. So it's a great read, and I do have the book if you do want to switch up reading,
Okay.
a bit. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, definitely. When he says, when you become witness to it, the higher dimension of the consciousness has come in, and that's when you're present, right? So 100%, when you're in there and you're in those moments and you're repeating things over and over again about the pain and you're experiencing and you're in that moment, you know other people can come in and offer their suggestions and try to raise your vibration and awaken you out of it, but it's not until we really do that, become present, and then we can step out of it. Super important. Thanks for sharing, Tanya. So I'll finish up this one, and then when we get to the next one, then somebody else can read. So page 39. What happens to the pain body when we become conscious enough to break our identification with it? Unconsciousness creates it. Consciousness transmutes it into itself. St. Paul expressed this universal principle beautifully. Everything is shown up by being exposed to the light, and whatever is exposed to the light itself becomes light. Just as you cannot fight the darkness, you cannot fight the pain body. Trying to do so would create inner conflict and thus further pain. Watching it is enough. Watching it implies accepting it as part of what it is at the moment. The pain body consists of trapped life energy that has split off from your total energy field and has temporarily become autonomous through the unnatural process of mind identification. It has turned in on itself and become anti-life, like an animal trying to devour its own tail. Why do you think our civilization has become so life destructive? But even the life destructive forces are still life energy. When you start to disidentify and become the watcher, the pain body will continue to operate for a while and will try to trick you into identifying with it again. Although you are no longer energizing it through your identification, it has certain momentum, just like a spinning wheel that will keep turning for a while, even when it is no longer being propelled. At this stage, it may also create physical aches and pains in different parts of the body, but they won't last. Stay present, stay conscious. Be the ever alert guardian of your inner space. You need to be present enough to be able to watch the pain body directly and feel its energy. It then cannot control your thinking. The moment your thinking is aligned with the energy field of the pain body, you are identified with it again and feeding it with your thoughts. For example, if anger is the predominant energy vibration of the pain body and you think angry thoughts, dwelling on what someone did to you or what you are going to do to him or her, then you have become unconscious. And the pain body has become you. Where there is anger, there is always pain underneath. Or when a dark mood comes upon you and you start getting into a negative mind pattern and thinking how dreadful your life is, your thinking has become aligned with the pain body. And you have become unconscious and vulnerable to the pain body's attack. Unconscious, the way that I use the word here, means to be identified with some mental or emotional pattern. It implies a complete absence of the watcher. Sustained conscious attention severs the link between the pain body and your thought process and brings about the process of transmutation. It is as if the pain becomes fuel for the flame of your consciousness, which then burns more brightly as a result. This is the esoteric meaning of the ancient art of alchemy, the transmutation of base metal into gold, of suffering into consciousness. The split within it is healed, and you become whole again. Your responsibility is not to create further pain. Let me summarize. Focus on the feeling inside you. Know that it is your pain body. Accept that it is there. Do not think about it. Don't let the feeling turn into thinking. Don't judge. Don't analyze. Don't make an identity for yourself out of it. Stay present and continue to be the observer of what is happening. Become aware not only of the emotional pain, but also of the one who observes, the silent watcher. This is the power of now, the power of your own conscious presence. Then see what happens. For many women, the pain body awakens particularly at the time of preceding menstrual flow. So I was just talking about this. I will talk about this and the reason for it more detail later. Right now, let me just say this. If you're able to stay alert and present at the time and watch whatever you feel within, rather than be taken over by it, it affords an opportunity for the most powerful spiritual practice, and a rapid transmutation of all past pain becomes possible. And we're going to pause there. This is so crazy. I had no idea like this this chapter was going to be this profound for me. Like I was cleaning my house prior to this, and I keep having all this weekend, I've been having these thoughts of a past event with someone, and I had no idea it was attached to the pain body. And like with when he said here, like, how do you want to handle with somebody or something, like with anger or take it out on them? And I was like, oh, that's my pain body. Very interesting. So we all have lessons here.
For sure. No, I was just texting the same girlfriend who's, you know, going through some stuff, and it was just like I can't make this stuff up. Like it's really been in our energy, because we were just speaking about like all of I can't believe how close this was to what I was talking about this morning, but this has we have room to really dig deep in it. But I was talking to her. Let me pull it up because I have it on my phone. So trying to pull it up and talk to you at the same time. Um, where he says when he asks the question, what happens to the pain body when we become conscious enough to break our identification with it, right? And then it kind of, where does he say? where he says like don't identify with it. Where was that? A conscious is the way that we're. But what it made me think um was don't like where he said don't identify with it. I forget what page that was on, but don't label yourself or don't connect to it or but what it made me think of is like all of these ailments that really don't have any origins, right? Because we know that, you know, most cancers and things like that are only like maybe there's like less than 2% that are actual like hereditary type cancers, and all the rest are really stress induced or some external factor.
Right.
And you know, conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia or lupus, and the part where he says, "But they won't last. You need to stay present, control your thinking. Hold on, the moment your thinking is aligned with the energy of the pain body, you are identified with it, and again, feeding your thoughts." Then there is the part where, oh, what is it? Oh, there is. Don't judge or analyze it. Don't make an identity of yourself out of it. You know, and meaning like people who hold so tight to, I have this, and, you
Yeah.
know, all their things is around, I have this, and I identify with this. And, you know, sometimes the danger is creating a diagnosis around it because now you're kind of victim to it, you know, especially a lot of those ailments that have no external origin, which means, you know, I think Joe Dispenza is really, and Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton is really big with, you know, and even Eckhart Tolle with being able to heal yourself from that because it's all emotionally
Mm-hmm.
stuck energies, you know. So I just thought that that was a powerful way to show that they're unconsciously just identifying themselves with this pain, because they're not being present, and continuing to be the observer of it. So I thought that was really powerful, and it just aligned exactly with what we were talking about, and it gives you hope too, because I'm like, I would really love for these psoas muscles to just turn like spaghetti, you know, and loosen up
Yeah.
so I can get into poses like lotus and stuff like that. Like, well, what will happen when my hips could just open up, you know? So it gives me hope to continue to observe and dissolve and separate from the pain. If they said if the pain is a myth, you know, but is it true? Like it's almost like so I could tell my brain to stop feeling this is painful.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I get from it.
You definitely have to believe it. You know, like somebody can tell you all day that, you know, the sky's a certain color, but until you really believe it yourself, then you're gonna believe it, you know?
True.
There's so many people I know within my own close, okay, we'll just say family, and that they're stuck in that victim mentality, and they identify there's somebody, whenever I speak to them, there's something else going with them, but then they
Mm-hmm.
they do also are aware of their own mind
Mm-hmm.
power, because they said, well, the doctors told me this, but I'm not going to claim that, and I'm not going to do that, and I'm not. But then there is still that victim mentality that's not healed, because the next week it's like, well, I'm going through this and I'm experiencing this, and I'm like, what happened? You just got rid of the other thing, you know, and now you're creating. But it's that victim mentality. You really have to like disassociate with it, and that stems from God knows where within each person, and
Right.
usually from childhood. But it's like that need for attention, or that need for validation from somebody,
Validation.
and that's where you're used to getting it from. So you're like, well, if I release this victim mentality,
What's
then
left?
yeah, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes such an, when people say, oh yeah, I suffer from headaches, oh yeah, I suffer from this, like it becomes part of their, I'm a doctor, or I'm a teacher, and I do this and that, and I also get headaches, and I also, you know,
It's a
it's
trauma
their
bond,
label.
right? It's a way to bond with other people, and most people bond through trauma. You think about,
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I'm so close to this person, and you ask, like, well, what were the stories? What were the things that you all talked about? And it's like, they went through all this stuff too, and I went through all this stuff too, and and it's like it's a trauma bond. Like,
Yeah.
if you're not connecting on something that is not considered a hashtag me too, then it's really, that me too experience is just validating or confirming that, it's a weird conundrum, that victim mentality. But it's a hard one to break. If even people who say things like, oh, I'm not going to claim it, I just feel like you're just repeating words that sound right to say at that time. But
Yeah.
it's not something that you deeply believe, or maybe because they know they're talking to someone like you, right? And it's something that you would resonate with, but it's not something that they believe. That could just be a small projection from you, your thought, process coming out of their mouth at that moment. But
But that's when I just go, bullshit.
yeah.
No.
Right. No, it's awesome.
Yeah, so really good stuff here. I love how it's all lining up for us. Welcome, Vic and Rich. Thanks for joining. We're reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. We're on page 41 for anyone who has the book. So anyone who wants to jump in and read now, I'm welcome and open to that.
Sure, I don't mind. I'm feeling like you must have a different size book than I do, because I'm like on page 30 something. I was like, wait, because I couldn't
Oh,
find you in the beginning.
oh,
But I was like, and I hear you switching pages, whereas it was still only in the middle of the page for me. So I was like, oh, she must have a small book. Okay. So yours starts off with ego identification with the pain body, correct?
correct. Thank you.
Okay. And how many pages am I, or how many sections?
I would say read up to the next
The
bold.
next, okay, so that's one page for me. Okay.
Okay.
All right. The process that I have just described is profoundly powerful. Oh, no, I'm going to wait till this motorcycle passes. Okay. It's profoundly powerful yet simple. It could be taught to a child, and hopefully one day it will become one of the first things children learn in school. Once you have understood the basic principle of being present as the watcher of what happens inside of you, and you understand it by expecting it, you have at your disposal the most transformational tool. This is not to deny that you may encounter intense resistance to disidentifying from your pain. This will be the case particularly if you have lived closely identified with your emotional pain body for most of your life, and for the whole or a large part of your sense of self is invested in it. What this means is that you have made an unhappy self out of your pain body, and believe that this mind-made fiction is who you are. In that case, unconscious fear of losing your identity will create strong resistance to any disidentification. In other words, you would rather be in pain, be the pain body, than to take a leap into the unknown and risk losing the familiar unhappy self. If this applies to you, observe the resistance within yourself. Observe the attachment to your pain. Be very alert. Observe the peculiar pleasure you derive from being unhappy. Observe the compulsion to talk or think about it. The resistance will cease if you make it conscious. You can then take your attention into the pain body, stay present as the witness, and so initiate its transmutation. Only you can do this. Nobody can do it for you. But if you're fortunate enough to find someone who is intensely conscious, if you can be with them and join them in the state of presence, that can be helpful and will accelerate things. In this way, your own light will quickly grow stronger. When a log that has only just started to burn is placed next to the one that's burning fiercely, and after a while they are separated again, The first log will be burning with much greater intensity. After all, it's the same fire. To be such a fire is one of the functions of a spiritual teacher. Some therapists may also be able to fulfill that function, provided that they have gone beyond the level of mind and can create and sustain a state of intense conscious presence while they are working with you.
If you want, you can continue reading.
Okay. Now that was really a good one. It's basically kind of what we
I know. I feel like
spoke about. Yep. All right. The origin of fear. You mentioned fear as being part of our basic underlying emotional pain. How does fear arise, and why is there so much of it in people's lives? And isn't a certain amount of fear just healthy self-protection? If I didn't have a fear of fire, I might put my hand in it and get burned. The reason why you don't put your hand in the fire is not because of fear. It's because you know that you'll get burned. You don't need fear to avoid unnecessary danger, just a minimum of intelligence and common sense. For such practical matters, it is useful to apply the lessons learned in the past. Now, if someone threatened you with fire or physical violence, you might experience something like fear. This is an instinctive shrinking back from danger, but not the psychological condition of fear that we're talking about here. The psychological condition of fear is divorced from any concrete and true immediate danger. It comes in many forms: unease, worry, anxiety, nervousness, tension, dread, phobia, and so on. The kind of psychological fear is always of something that might happen, not if something is happening now. You are in the here and now, while your mind is in the future. This creates an anxiety gap. And if you are identified with your mind and have lost touch with the power and the simplicity of the now, that anxiety gap will be your constant companion. You can always cope with the present moment, but you cannot cope with something that is only a mind projection. You cannot cope with the future. Moreover, as long as you are identified with your mind, the ego runs your life. As I pointed out earlier, because of its phantom nature and despite the elaborate defense mechanisms, the ego is very vulnerable and insecure, and it itself as a constantly under, and it sees itself as constantly under threat. Sorry. This by the way, is the case even if the ego is outwardly confident. Now remember that an emotion is the body's reaction to your mind. What message is the body receiving continuously from the ego? The false mind made self, danger, I am under threat, and what is the emotion generated by this continuous message? Fear, of course. Fear seems to have many causes: fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of being hurt, and so on. But ultimately, all fear is the ego's fear of death and but ultimately all fear is the ego's fear of death, of annihilation. To the ego, death is always just around the corner. In this mind identified state, fear of death affects every aspect of your life. For example, even such a seemingly trivial and normal thing as the compulsive need to be right in an argument and make the other person wrong. Defending the mental position with which you have identified is due to the fear of death. If you identify with a mental position, then you are wrong. Your mind-based self is seriously threatened with annihilation. So you as the ego cannot afford to be wrong. To be wrong is to die. Wars have been fought over this, and countless relationships have broken down. Once you have disidentified from your mind, whether you are right or wrong makes no difference to your sense of self at all. So the forcefully compulsive and deeply unconscious need to be right, which is a form of violence, will no longer be there. You can state clearly and firmly how you feel or what you think, but there will be no aggressiveness or defensiveness about it. Your sense of self is then derived from a deeper and truer place from within yourself, not from the mind. Watch out for any kind of defensiveness within yourself. What are you defending? An illusory identity, an image in your mind, a fictitious entity. By making this pattern conscious, by witnessing it, you disidentify from it. In the light of your consciousness, the unconscious pattern will then quickly dissolve. This is the end of all arguments and power games, which are so corrosive to relationships. Power over others is weakness disguised as strength. True power is within, and it's available to you now. So, anyone who is identified with their mind and therefore disconnected from their true power, their deeper self rooted in being, will have fear as their constant companion. There's one paragraph left. The number of people who have gone beyond mind is as yet extremely small. So you can assume that virtually everyone you meet or know lives in a state of fear. Only the intensity of it varies. It fluctuates between anxiety and dread at one end and the end of the scale, and a vague unease and distant sense of threat at the other. Most people become conscious of it only when it takes on one of its more accurate forms.
So this is something here that I talk a lot about this with clients when I work on them with them one on one, and I say it a lot about anxiety, living in the future. A lot of people suffer with anxiety and worry about that. I feel like it was definitely triggered through the events that's happened over the last 2 years. People are worried more and more about the future, but we can't change anything. So it's super important to just be present, so that we can shut that down for sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna continue. There's like one more page up to the next chapter. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this and then open it up for discussion. Thank you for reading again. So the ego's search for wholeness. Another aspect of the emotional pain is that an intrinsic part of the egoic mind is a deep-seated sense of lack or incompleteness, of not being whole. In some people, this is conscious, in others, unconscious. If it's conscious, then it'll manifest as unsettling and constant feeling of not being worthy or good enough. If it's unconscious, it will be felt indirectly as an intense craving, wanting, or needing. In either case, people will often enter into a compulsive pursuit of ego gratification and things to identify with in order to fill this hole they feel. So they strive after possessions, money, success, power, recognition, special relationships, basically so that they can feel better about themselves, feel more complete. But even when they attain these things, they soon find that the hole is still there. It is bottomless. Then they're really in trouble because they cannot delude themselves anymore. Well, they can, but it just gets more difficult. As long as the egoic mind is running your life, you cannot truly be at ease. You cannot be at peace or fulfilled except for brief intervals when you obtained what you wanted, when a craving that has been fulfilled. Sorry. Since the ego is a derived sense of self, it needs to identify with external things. It needs to be both defended and fed. The most common ego identification has to do with possessions. The work you do, social status, recognition, knowledge, and education, physical appearance, special abilities, relationships, personal family history, belief systems, political, nationalistic, racial, religious, other collective identifications. None of these are you. Whew. Do you find this frightening, or is it a relief? All of these things you will have to relinquish sooner or later. Perhaps you'll find it just as hard to believe. And I am certainly not asking you to believe that your identity cannot be found in any of these things, you will know the truth for yourself. You will know it at the latest when you feel death approaching. Death is the stripping away of all that is not you. The secret of life is to die before you die, and to find that there is no death. I absolutely love this, and it is 100% true that nothing, like, to sum it all up, nothing matters. Period. And it's a beautiful thing, especially in the world now where the ego and everything that's going on is labels and separation consciousness and continuous and continuous and continuous, and oh, there's just something else and something else and something else to separate us, and none of it matters, because when we cross over, we're still all going to the same place, and we're still all going to be unified together. So none of it matters.
You know, there's also scripture, and I'm sure in many different books of philosophy and religions that allude to the same thing. Again, something that just came out of my mouth, I want to say within the last day or so, was in Ecclesiastes, where um, I believe it's Jeremiah, is just saying, it's the first chapter, like everything is meaningless, right? Everything is meaningless. And I know in the Christianity sector, it's kind of interpreted as negative because it's coming from their own concept of what meaningless means, right? It's some insult or something attached to it. But what it's saying, which supports this, and if people could just see it in that way, it would be very freeing, right? It would be very freeing that nothing has meaning, right? Like nothing matters, right? Nothing has meaning to it. If you have a partner or a family member who, accidentally or on purpose broke, a picture frame that, your someone very special broke, gave to you, it's like the picture frame in and of itself is meaningless. It's only the meaning you put on it, right? Like when we realize that it's it's just really all, it's crazy. It's like it's really all in our heads. It's as simple as it sounds. It's just something that it's hard to wrap around your average person's head. Like as he said, most of the world have yet to come to this level of consciousness. But when you hear it like that, I feel like it makes me want to take a deep breath. I don't know if anyone else feels like that. It's like this
Yeah,
sigh, really.
he
It's
says,
just like, oh,
do you find this frightening or is it a relief? And it's going to
yeah,
be wherever you're at within your consciousness. And if it's frightening, that's because you're identified with these things. You're identified with you're only known for your special abilities, your relationship, your history, your religion, your culture, all these things. That's so. If you strip that away, then who am I?
yeah. You know
So
what? I didn't even hear you read that part. I must have like zoned out or was doing something, but I was like, wow, he did say that. Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
it feels like a relief. But at one point in time, I could absolutely identify, and maybe not even, now, it's still one of those questions, but I could have identified with that. Well, if I'm not the daughter or the friend or the sister, or something that is bringing XYZ to the table, and that's what I'm known for, accepted for, then who am I? It's why I have this huge affinity to the phoenix, and how that's kind of been my burning cloud of guidance in so many ways. But that whole death to all of that, and rising understanding, like you said, Shannon, like nothing matters, like none of that matters. It's very relieving.
very relieving. Thank you. Does anybody else want to share their insight? We finished up now, chapter 2.
Yeah, so with me, like the realization of, being carried by all these labels constantly, like I had that a while ago. And like I'm at a point in my life right now that even, like he was talking before about your thoughts and how you identify with them. And I literally sit here, and when I feel a negative thought come up or like a past thing that wants to replay, like I tell myself like I'm safe and that I don't identify with this anymore. And I kind of like just take my power back from having that constant cycle of having these thoughts over and over.
That's awesome. That's so perfect. That's exactly what you have to do. Yes, I experienced this, but I'm not that person anymore. And that just in that little statement is so empowering, and that's so awesome, Jasmine. I love hearing that. You're doing so amazing.
Thank you. I've been feeling it's so freeing. I gotta tell you, like, I now, like, looking back at it, like, I felt like I was literally my trauma. Like, I was just like my walking trauma. Like, I don't know what other way to explain it. Like, now that all this is like gone, or like, in the process, because we're always healing, like, some shit is always gonna come back up. But it feels freeing. It
Yeah.
feels freeing.
Like they say, you truly healed when you can talk about it and you're not like reliving it,
Right, right,
right? Not
right,
crying. And so there's so much like in my past that I've experienced of the negative sense, but I'm so far from it. Like I don't identify with it anymore. And even like when I talk about it, I'm just like, why the fuck am I talking about this? Like this
right. I feel the same.
like
I feel the same.
this isn't me anymore, but it sometimes it's imperative to have those experiences because we help other people through those experiences. But
Right.
definitely, like once you're healed, and it's just you let go of it. Like you don't have to keep healing the same thing over and over again. You can set that shit down. You
You're
don't have to.
right. You know, and then also like another thing for me was that I like really thought that I could just figure all this out on my own and like do it. And just like doing like these, weekly meetings that we've been doing and just like, expanding my knowledge and actually talking to a therapist about my issues like has helped so much. Like
Yeah.
I just if anybody needs help, like reach out and get help because it's really been life changing for me.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. We need that support system there.
Right.
You know. And I'm definitely open to helping, listening, for sure. I'm so glad you found someone that you resonate with and that's helping you. It's
Thank you
awesome.
so much.
Well, guys, it's 9:08. I love you guys so much, and I could talk to you guys all night. And thanks for joining me. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll send out the thanks for reading, Tanya, or yeah, Tanya. Sorry, Tanya. Thanks for reading. Thanks for chatting and joining us. It's perfect. Everything's like just in alignment. No coincidences. So next week, Sunday, we'll be here at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll start on page 47, chapter 3, when we go moving deeply into the now. So, this is when I feel like it's going to start to get a little juicy for us. I will be sending the follow up email, which is going to have the link to the recording and a little bit of homework. If you want to dive a little deeper and do a little work on there, you'll have that. It's not a requirement, but it is there. I'm also putting all of the links of the recordings are going to be on my personal website, anchoredsoultherapy.com. Currently, they're just links, but I am downloading everything and they are going to be permanent because Twitter does remove them after 30 days. But if you want to catch up, everything's there. It's in order. Me, a little bit of OCD. It's easy to find on my website.
Well,
So,
this is
thanks.
awesome. I just wanted to say that. Sorry, I was like, this
No,
is
go ahead.
awesome, awesome space. I'll also email you my or DM you my email. But this is great. I love what you're doing here with that, along with the follow up. I may have to borrow some of your methods in my space. It's like, oh, that's awesome. Sometimes you don't remember, think that you could take it off of Twitter as much as you want, but that's great that you're doing that, and the fact that you're only in chapter 3, even though I'm like currently within 3 books right now, I'm feeling like I need to go back and catch up just so I could catch up with you ladies and be here on Sunday nights, because this is actually it's only 7 p.m. my time, but it's a pretty free time. I think I could add this in here because usually I'm doing something else, but I think I could definitely make time for something like this. So thank you. I'm glad I stumbled in.
Thank you. We're welcome to have you. All right. So that's it, guys. Thanks so much for joining me on the Spiritual Gangsta. I'll see you guys in the future.